Before we start, hit that subscribe button right now, because what I'm about to tell you is so insane, so dangerous, so absolutely unhinged that you'll want to make sure you catch part 2. Trust me, if you think slapping a mafia boss is crazy, wait until you hear what happens when his enemies come for me. Now, let's get into it. You know that feeling when you're so tired, so done with everything that your brain just stops calculating consequences? That's where I was the night I slapped death in the face and somehow made it fall in love with me. Let me back up. My name is Mary Okonkwo, and I've been living in Seoul for 8 months. 8 months of being stared at on the subway like I was an exotic animal. 8 months of old Korean grandmas touching my hair without permission. 8 months of working 3 jobs just to afford a closet-sized room in Itaewon that smelled like kimchi and broken dreams. Don't get me wrong, I loved Korea. The efficiency, the beauty, the food. But loving a place doesn't mean it loves you back. And as a black woman from Lagos trying to make it in a city that barely acknowledged my existence, girl, I was exhausted. That Friday night, I was working my shift at Club Azure. This bougie lounge in Gangnam where the champagne cost more than my monthly rent, and the clientele were either old money, new money, or blood money. I was one of the invisible people. You know the type. We cleaned glasses, cleared tables, existed in the background while rich people pretended we weren't human. I was picking up empty bottles from a VIP section when I heard it. The sound of a glass shattering. Then a whimper that made my skin crawl. I turned and saw this young waiter, couldn't have been more than 19, on his knees, apologizing profusely in Korean. Blood dripped from his hand where he'd cut himself picking up broken glass. He'd spilled a drink. Just a little splash of whiskey on someone's expensive Armani suit. The kind of accident that happens 100 times a night in any club. But the man sitting there? He wasn't accepting the apology. He was beautiful in that dangerous way Korean dramas warn you about but never quite capture. Sharp jawline that could cut glass. Dark eyes that held nothing but calculated coldness. Hair pushed back perfectly, revealing a face that could have been carved from marble by an artist with a fetish for perfection and cruelty. He wore a black 3-piece suit that probably cost more than my university education, and his fingers, God, those fingers, were adorned with silver rings, one of which had a dragon design with ruby eyes that seemed to glow in the club's purple lights. Choi Jin-hyuk. I didn't know his name then, but everyone else did. I could tell by how the entire VIP section had gone still, by how even the music seemed to lower in volume, by how the club manager had materialized out of nowhere, sweating and bowing so low his forehead nearly touched his knees. "Please, sir," the waiter stammered, his voice breaking. "I'm so sorry. I'll pay for the dry cleaning. I'll pay for everything." Jin-hyuk didn't even look at him. He took a slow sip of his remaining whiskey, then set the glass down with a soft click that somehow sounded louder than a gunshot. He lifted one finger. Just one. 2 men in black suits appeared from the shadows like they'd been waiting for this exact moment. Bodyguards, but not the Hollywood kind. These were real. I could see it in their eyes, dead, professional, practiced. They grabbed the kid by his arms, lifting him effortlessly off his feet. "Take him to the back room," Jin-hyuk said, his voice so cold it could freeze hell over. Perfect Korean, but with an underlying tone that suggested he'd given this exact order 100 times before. 3 fingers. Make sure he remembers which hand spills drinks. The kid's eyes went wide with pure, primal terror. "No, please. Please. I have a little sister. I need this job. I need my hands for school." And that's when something in me just snapped. Maybe it was because I'd spent all day being treated like I was less than human. Maybe it was because my landlord had threatened to evict me that morning for being 2 days late on rent. Maybe it was because I'd called my mama in Lagos and lied about how well I was doing, and the guilt was eating me alive. Maybe it was because I was just sick and tired of watching powerful people crush everyone beneath them like insects. I didn't think. Thinking was a luxury I couldn't afford in that moment. I just moved. I crossed that VIP section in 4 strides, my worn-out sneakers squeaking on the marble floor. The bodyguards saw me coming, but they didn't take me seriously. Why would they? I was just the help. Just another invisible black girl cleaning up after rich people. Let him go, I said in Korean, my Lagos accent thick but my tone crystal clear. The entire section went silent. Like someone had pressed a cosmic mute button. Jin-hyuk's eyes slid to me for the first time, and it was like being seen by a great white shark. Cold, assessing, deciding whether you were prey or just debris in the water. His gaze traveled from my scuffed shoes, up my plain black work uniform that was a size too big, to my face. He paused there, on my rich dark skin that stood out like a beacon in this sea of pale faces. On my full lips pressed together in defiance. On my coiled hair pulled back into a bun that was coming loose from hours of work. For a moment, just a fraction of a second, something flickered in those dead eyes. Curiosity, maybe. Or the way a bored cat looks at a mouse that just did something unexpected. Then it was gone. Go back to work, he said dismissively, already looking away like I was beneath his notice. The bodyguards started dragging the kid toward a door marked private in the back. I could hear him sobbing. I said, let him go. My voice cut through the club noise. Heads turned. The manager looked like he was about to have a heart attack. Jin-hyuk turned back to me slowly, like a predator deciding whether something was worth the effort of killing. Do you know who I am? I don't care if you're the president of Samsung. I shot back, my fear buried deep under 8 months of accumulated frustration and rage. That boy made a mistake. You don't destroy someone's life over a goddamn mistake. Someone gasped. You don't curse at Choi Jin-hyuk. You don't even look at him wrong if you value your life. His eyebrow raised. Just slightly. The first crack in his perfect, cold mask. You're brave. He stood up, and God, he was tall, at least 6 feet of controlled violence wrapped in Italian fabric and expensive cologne. Or incredibly stupid. I'm Nigerian, I said, meeting his eyes even though everything in my body screamed at me to run. We don't bow to bullies. We've dealt with worse than you. The silence that followed was so complete, I could hear my own heartbeat thundering in my ears like a war drum. Then Jin-hyuk smiled. It wasn't a nice smile. It was the smile of a predator that just found interesting prey. The smile of someone who hadn't been challenged in so long. He'd forgotten what it felt like. Fine, he said softly, his voice like silk over steel. I'll let him go. Relief started to flood through me. If you take his punishment instead. My blood turned to ice water. He took a step toward me. Then another. Each footfall deliberate, controlled. The crowd parted for him like the Red Sea. He moved until he was close enough that I could smell his cologne. Something dark and woody and expensive, mixed with whiskey and something else. Something dangerous. That's what you want, isn't it? He murmured, loud enough for only me to hear. His breath was warm on my face. To be the hero? The savior? I should have backed down. Should have apologized and begged for mercy. Should have dropped to my knees like every other person who'd ever challenged Choi Jin-hyuk. Instead, I felt my hand move before my brain could stop it. The slap echoed through the entire venue like a gunshot. My palm stung from the impact. His head had barely moved. He was solid as a statue, but there was blood now, just a little, from where my cheap ring had caught his bottom lip. The world stopped spinning. Every single person in Club Azure froze like we were in a photograph. The music cut off mid-beat. The bartender dropped a glass and it shattered on the floor, the sound impossibly loud. Even the bodyguards looked too shocked to move, their hands instinctively going to their guns but not quite drawing them yet. I stared at my own hand like it belonged to someone else. Like I was watching this happen from outside my body. What have I done? Oh God, what have I done? Jin-hyuk touched his lips slowly, deliberately. Looked at the blood on his fingers. The club lights caught it, made it shine like rubies against his pale skin. Then he did something that made my soul leave my body. He laughed. It was a low, dark sound that started deep in his chest and rolled out like thunder. Not a friendly laugh. Not even an amused laugh. It was the laugh of someone who'd just experienced something so novel, so unexpected, that their brain didn't quite know how to process it. What's your name? He asked, his voice almost gentle now, which was somehow more terrifying than the coldness. I couldn't speak. My survival instincts had finally kicked in, and they were screaming. Your name, he repeated, stepping closer. So close I could see that his eyes weren't pure black. They had flecks of dark brown, like expensive chocolate. So close I could see a small scar on his left eyebrow, probably from a fight when he was younger. And Mary, I whispered. Mary. He said it slowly, tasting each syllable like fine wine. His eyes roamed over my face, drinking in every detail. Mary, you just made the most interesting mistake of your life. He turned to his men without breaking eye contact with me. Let the boy go. He's fired but whole. This one, his smile widened, showing perfect white teeth. This one is mine now. I didn't wait to find out what mine meant. I ran. I pushed through the crowd, ignoring my manager screaming my name, and burst out into the Seoul night. The cold October air hit my face like a slap of reality, burning my lungs as I gasped for breath. My hands were shaking so badly, I could barely pull out my phone. Choi Jin-hyuk. I didn't know all the details then, but I knew enough. Everyone in Seoul knew enough. He was the head of the Geometrian BAME, the Black Serpent, the most feared criminal organization in South Korea. The man who controlled everything from Busan to Seoul: drugs, weapons, human trafficking, protection rackets, illegal gambling. The man who had politicians in his pocket and police on his payroll. The man who, rumor had it, had once fed a rival boss to pigs while making the man's family watch. And I had slapped him. In front of his men. In front of witnesses. I was dead. I was so dead. I ran through the neon-lit streets of Gangnam, my lungs burning, my cheap shoes slapping against wet pavement. It had started to rain, that particular Seoul rain that feels like tiny needles of ice. I ran past couples taking selfies, past street food vendors, past drunk salarymen stumbling out of Noribang. I ran until I reached Gangnam Station and threw myself onto the subway. All the way home to Itaewon, I kept looking over my shoulder, expecting to see those men in black suits. Expecting a hand to grab me. Expecting a bullet. But there was nothing. No one. The subway car was packed with the usual Friday night crowd. Teenagers heading to clubs, tired workers heading home, a few American soldiers from the base. I pressed myself into a corner, trying to make myself invisible again. Trying to disappear into the background like I'd done for 8 months. But I couldn't stop shaking. By the time I reached my tiny room, I'd almost convinced myself that maybe, just maybe, I'd get away with it. Maybe he'd been too shocked to react properly. Maybe he'd decide I wasn't worth the effort. Maybe he'd forget about the crazy Nigerian girl who'd lost her mind. I triple-locked my door, pushed my dresser against it for good measure, and collapsed on my bed, still in my work clothes that smelled like club smoke and my own fear sweat. My phone buzzed. A text from my manager. You're fired. Don't ever come back. And pray Choi SSI shows you mercy, because I can't protect you. Perfect. Just perfect. I didn't sleep that night. Every sound made me jump. Every car door closing made my heart race. Every footstep in the hallway made me grab the kitchen knife I'd placed under my pillow. I kept seeing his face, that cold, beautiful face, and the way he'd smiled after I hit him. Like I'd given him a gift instead of an insult. Like I'd woken something up in him that had been sleeping for a very long time. The next morning, I woke up to silence. No police banging on my door. No hitmen breaking down my locks. No angry phone calls or threatening texts. Nothing. Just Seoul on a Saturday morning. The sounds of the city waking up, vendors setting up their stalls, the old woman next door yelling at her husband like she did every weekend. I didn't trust it, but I also needed groceries. My stomach was eating itself, and I'd run out of instant ramen the day before. So I ventured out, keeping my hood up, my head down, my hand on the small can of pepper spray in my pocket that probably wouldn't do shit against professional killers, but made me feel slightly better. The ajumma at the convenience store gave me her usual suspicious look, like she did with all foreigners, but nothing else was different. I bought instant ramen, banana milk, some kimbap, and a small bottle of soju because if I was going to die, I might as well die drunk. I was walking back to my building, bags in hand, when I noticed it. The car. A black Mercedes S-Class, parked across from my building with its engine running. Tinted windows so dark they looked like holes cut into reality. Expensive enough that it had no business being in my neighborhood where most people drove 20-year-old Hyundais or took the bus. My stomach dropped to my feet. I walked faster, trying not to run, trying not to look suspicious. The car didn't move, but I felt eyes on me. Watching, tracking, calculating. I made it to my building, climbed the 4 flights of stairs 2 at a time, and locked myself in again. My hands were shaking so badly I dropped the kimbap, and it rolled under my bed. I tried to distract myself. Put on some Afrobeats, burn a boy, loud enough to drown out my thoughts. Started cooking the ramen, the familiar smell of spicy broth usually calming me down, but not today. Called my sister in Lagos and lied about how well I was doing, how Korea was everything I dreamed of, how I was making good money and meeting great people. All lies. But I couldn't tell her the truth, that I'd slapped a Korean mob boss and was probably going to end up in the Han River with concrete shoes. I avoided looking out the window for as long as I could. But when evening came and curiosity finally won over fear, I peeked through my curtains. The car was still there. Different one now. Black SUV with even darker tinted windows. And I swear I saw the silhouette of a man in the driver's seat, absolutely still. Like a statue. Oh God. Oh God. Oh God. Oh God. I spent the weekend in my room, living off ramen and paranoia, and that bottle of soju I'd bought. On Monday morning, I forced myself to go job hunting. I'd burned through my pathetic savings and desperately needed work. But something weird happened. I went to the restaurant where I'd applied last week, a mid-tier Korean barbecue place that had rejected me because we prefer Korean speakers. The same manager who'd looked at me like I was something stuck to his shoe now smiled widely and offered me a job on the spot. "We'd be honored to have you work here," he said in overly polite Korean, bowing so low I could see his bald spot. "Better pay than your last position. Better hours. When can you start?" My bullshit detector was screaming. Why the change of heart? We received a strong recommendation. From a very important person. Who? His smile became strained. "I'm not at liberty to say, but they speak very highly of you." I walked out without another word. Next, I tried the coffee shop that had rejected me for being too tall and dark for their aesthetic. Yes, they actually said that to my face. Now, the owner practically begged me to work there, offering double the normal wage for baristas. Then my landlord called. Mr. Park, the man who'd been threatening to evict me for being 2 days late on rent. The same man who'd called me a dirty foreigner when I'd first moved in. "Miss Mary," he said, his tone completely different, obsequious, almost fearful. "I wanted to apologize for any inconvenience. Your rent has been taken care of. For the next 6 months. In full." My throat went dry. What? By who? A benefactor. Very generous. Very private. Very important. His voice dropped to a whisper. "Miss Mary, I don't know what you did or who you know, but please don't bring trouble to my building." He hung up before I could respond. I stood in the middle of the street, my phone still pressed to my ear, watching the black SUV parked across from my building. This was insane. That night, I couldn't take it anymore. The fear had morphed into anger, good old Nigerian anger that my mother had warned me about. "Mary," she'd say, "your temper will get you killed one day." Well, looks like she was right. I marched downstairs, fury overriding my survival instincts. I walked right up to that SUV, my heart pounding but my jaw set, and banged on the window with my fist. It rolled down smoothly, revealing a man in a black suit and sunglasses at night, because apparently that's a thing these people do to look intimidating. "What do you want?" I demanded in Korean, not caring that my accent was thick or that I was probably signing my death warrant. "Why are you following me?" "We're here to protect you, Miss Okonkwo," he said calmly, his voice flat and professional. "Protect me from what?" "From anyone who might wish you harm." I almost laughed. "You are the people who wish me harm." He didn't respond. Didn't even blink behind those stupid sunglasses. "Tell your boss, tell Choi Jin-hyuk, that I don't need his protection or his money or his anything. Tell him to leave me alone." Still nothing. "Are you even listening to me?" "Every word, Miss Okonkwo. But my orders come from Choi SSI, not from you." Have a pleasant evening." The window rolled back up, smooth as silk, leaving me standing there in the street like an idiot. This continued for 3 more days. Black cars following me everywhere I went. My bills mysteriously getting paid. Job offers appearing out of nowhere from places that had rejected me before. Even the racist ajumma at the convenience store started being nice to me, giving me extra banchan with my kimbap and bowing when I left. I felt like I was losing my mind. On Thursday evening, I was in my tiny kitchen making jollof rice, my mama's recipe, the only thing that made me feel human anymore. The smell of tomatoes and peppers and curry and thyme filled my small room, reminding me of home, of Lagos, of Sunday dinners with my family, of a time when my biggest problem was Nipa taking light or my little brother eating all the plantain before I could get any. I was stirring the pot, humming a Tiwa Savage song, adding a little extra pepper because I liked it hot enough to make my eyes water, when someone knocked on my door. Not a normal knock. A polite, rhythmic tap-tap-tap that somehow sounded expensive. Sophisticated. Like the knock itself had gone to private school. My wooden spoon clattered into the pot, splashing red sauce on my wall. Another knock.
Top, top, top.
Miss Okonkwo. A male voice called through the door in perfect, unaccented English. "We mean you no harm. Mr. Choi would like to speak with you." I grabbed a kitchen knife, the big one I used for chopping onions. A stupid defense, I know, but it made me feel marginally less helpless. "Go away," I shouted. "Please, miss. We can do this the easy way, or—" "There is no we. Leave me alone, or I'm calling the police." Silence. For a moment, I thought they'd actually listened. That maybe I'd won. Then I heard it. A key turning in my lock. They have a key to my apartment. They have a fucking key. The door opened slowly, deliberately, and 2 men in suits entered. Not the bodyguards from the club, different ones. Younger, sleeker, more polite. But just as intimidating in their professionalism. They moved like dancers or martial artists, every motion controlled and purposeful. "Miss Okonkwo," the first one said, his English perfect with a slight British accent, probably educated abroad. "Mr. Choi requests your presence. We have a car waiting downstairs." "And if I refuse?" I held up the knife, knowing it was useless, but refusing to go down without showing some fight. The second man, stockier, with a scar on his neck, smiled. It wasn't threatening exactly. Somehow that made it worse. It was the smile of someone who knew the outcome was inevitable and was just being polite about it. "We were told you were intelligent, Miss Okonkwo. I'm sure you understand that refusal isn't really an option here." My grip tightened on the knife. "So you're kidnapping me?"
Great.
"That's just great." "We prefer the term polite escort," British accent guy said with a slight bow. "Mr. Choi has no intention of harming you. He simply wishes to speak with you. You have my word as a professional." The word of a gangster. How comforting. He smiled. "Former British SAS, actually. But I suppose gangster pays better." Despite everything, I almost laughed. "Can I at least turn off my stove? I don't want to burn down the building." "Of course. Please take your time." They waited patiently while I turned off the jollof rice, my precious jollof, now probably ruined, and I'd used the last of my good tomatoes. I grabbed my phone, my jacket, my pepper spray that would be useless against these professionals. My hands were steady as I moved through these actions, but inside, I was screaming. The hallway was empty. They'd made sure of that, probably paid off my neighbors or threatened them or both. No witnesses to see Mary Okonkwo being taken away by men in black suits. Outside, a black Mercedes waited, back door open like a mouth ready to swallow me whole. The rain had started again, Seoul's October rain that came down in sheets and made the neon signs blur into abstract art. I got in, because what choice did I have? Fight 2 professional soldiers with a kitchen knife? Run in a city where they clearly had unlimited resources? The interior smelled like new leather and money, and that same expensive cologne Choi Jin-hyuk had been wearing. One guard sat on either side of me, not touching me, not threatening me, but there.
Solid.
Reminding me that I wasn't going anywhere they didn't want me to go. We drove through the city in silence. I tried to memorize the route like they do in movies. Up through Itaewon, across the Han River via Hanam Bridge, into Gangnam, then higher into the hills where Seoul's ultra-rich lived in their glass towers and gated communities, looking down on the rest of us like gods on Mount Olympus looking down at ants. The higher we climbed, the more the city transformed. The streets became cleaner, wider, quieter. The buildings became taller, more architectural, more expensive. This was a different Seoul, one I'd only seen in K-dramas and Instagram posts from rich exchange students. Finally, we stopped in front of a building that was more sculpture than architecture. All black glass and sharp angles, it looked like someone had tried to build a piece of night. The entrance had no signs, no numbers. If you needed to know what it was, you already knew. They led me through a private entrance where a security guard bowed so low, I thought his spine would snap. Into an elevator with no buttons. It just knew where to go, like something out of a sci-fi movie. My ears popped as we rose higher and higher, floor numbers I couldn't track. The doors opened directly into a penthouse. And not just any penthouse. This was wealth on a level I'd only imagined. The entire floor was open-concept luxury, probably 5,000 square feet of pure excess. Floor-to-ceiling windows showed Seoul spread out below like a circuit board of lights, the Han River snaking through it like a dark vein. The furniture was minimal but clearly expensive, all clean lines and dark wood, and leather that probably cost more per square inch than my entire life. Art hung on the walls, real art, the kind you see in museums with little plaques. A Rothko, if I wasn't mistaken. A small sculpture that looked like a Giacometti. But I barely noticed any of that. Because he was there. Choi Jin-hyuk stood by the window, hands in his pockets, looking out at his city like a king surveying his kingdom. He'd changed since the club. Now he wore a simple black turtleneck and perfectly tailored slacks, no suit jacket. Somehow this made him look more dangerous, like a blade without a sheath. More real. More human. More terrifying. "Leave us," he said without turning around, his voice cutting through the silence like a knife. The guards bowed in perfect unison and disappeared so smoothly it was like they'd never been there. The silence stretched. Rain pattered against the windows. Somewhere in the building, I heard the faint hum of expensive heating systems, of wealth so complete it could control even temperature and sound. "Your jollof rice was burning," he said finally, still not looking at me. I blinked, completely thrown. "What?" "The jollof rice you were cooking. You didn't turn the heat low enough before you left. The bottom was starting to burn." He turned then, and the city lights behind him made him look like something out of a dark fairy tale. A dangerous prince in a tower of glass and steel. I had someone go back and fix it. Lower the heat, added a bit of water, stirred it. It should still be edible when you return home.
My mind struggled to process this.
A mafia boss, a man who apparently fed people to pigs, was concerned about my rice? You saved my dinner? Nigerian jollof is too valuable to waste. Though I'll admit, your ratio of tomatoes to rice is unconventional. He moved closer, each step deliberate and controlled. "Do you know why you're here, Mary?" I swallowed hard, my mouth suddenly dry as desert sand. "To kill me?" That made him smile, a real smile this time, not the predatory one from the club. It transformed his face, made him look younger, almost human. "If I wanted you dead, you'd be dead." He said it casually, like he was discussing the weather. "You'd have been dead 30 seconds after you slapped me. I could have had Minjun snap your neck before you took 3 steps. Could have had your body dissolved in acid and poured into the Han River before sunrise. Could have made you disappear so completely, even your family in Lagos would never find a trace." The casual way he described my potential murder made my blood run cold. "But I didn't," he continued, stopping a few feet away from me. "Do you know why? Because you're insane?" He laughed, a genuine sound of amusement. "Probably, but that's not why." His expression grew serious, his dark eyes studying my face like I was a puzzle he couldn't quite solve. "I wanted you here because we need to talk. About what happens next. Next.
Seat."
He gestured to a leather couch that probably cost more than my university education.
"Please."
I sat because my legs were shaking anyway. He sat across from me in a matching chair, his posture relaxed but his eyes alert. A predator at rest, but ready to strike. Do you know how long it's been since someone touched me without permission? He asked. I shook my head, not trusting my voice. 10 years. A decade. He leaned forward, elbows on his knees. Do you know what I do to people who disrespect me, Mary? Murder them. Sometimes. If they're lucky. His eyes never left mine. Do you want to know what I did to the last person who hit me? Not really. I'm going to tell you anyway, because you need to understand who I am. He sat back, his voice taking on a storytelling quality. It was 6 years ago. A prosecutor, young, idealistic, thought he could clean up Seoul. He slapped me with a subpoena in a restaurant full of people. Made a big show of it. My heart was pounding so hard I could barely breathe. I had my men take him. We drove him out to a warehouse in Incheon. I own several. They're very useful. I sat him in a chair, and I asked him a simple question. Do you know who I am? Jin-hyuk's voice was calm, almost gentle. He did, of course. Everyone knows who I am. But knowing and understanding are different things. What did you do to him? The words came out as a whisper. I had my men bring in his wife. His children, 2 beautiful little girls, 7 and 9 years old. He paused, letting that sink in. I didn't touch them, you understand. But I made him think I would. I made him believe it. And then I gave him a choice, his hands or his tongue. I felt sick. He chose his tongue. Begged me to take his tongue. So I did. Jin-hyuk's voice never changed, never showed any emotion. He could have been describing a business transaction. Cut it out myself with a knife I'd had specially made in Japan. Then I let him go.
Alive.
Whole mostly. As a message. You're a monster, I whispered. Yes. He said it without hesitation, without shame. I'm a monster who controls half of Seoul's underground economy. I move drugs, weapons, people. I own politicians and police captains. I've killed 17 men with my own hands, 19 if you count the ones who technically died from blood loss after I was done with them. I've ordered the deaths of dozens more. He stood up and moved to the window, his silhouette dark against the glittering city. So, when you slapped me in that club, Mary, do you know what I felt? I couldn't speak, couldn't breathe.
Alive.
He turned back to me, and there was something in his eyes I hadn't seen before. Vulnerability. Real, raw vulnerability. For the first time in a decade, I felt alive. Because you didn't see Choi Jin-hyuk, the head of the Black Serpent. You didn't see my reputation or my power or the 17 bodies in my wake. You saw a man being cruel to someone weaker, and you stopped him. He moved closer, and I pressed back into the expensive leather couch. When was the last time someone saw me as just a man, Mary? When was the last time someone looked at me and didn't see dollar signs or fear? When was the last time someone touched me because they were angry, not because they wanted something? I don't understand what you want from me, I managed to say. He stopped, seemed to struggle with the words. I've been watching you. These past few days.
Learning about you.
Mary Okonkwo, 26, born in Lagos. Father died when you were 12. Car accident. Mother raised you and your 3 siblings by selling fabric at Balagan Market. You put yourself through university studying international relations, graduated top of your class. Came to Korea with dreams of working for a multinational corporation, maybe the UN. Hearing my life summarized like that, hearing details I'd never told anyone, made my skin crawl. But it didn't work out that way, did it? He continued. Because Korea doesn't know what to do with a brilliant black woman. So you ended up working 3 minimum wage jobs, living in a room smaller than my closet, slowly drowning in a city that doesn't see you. Tears pricked my eyes. Angry tears. How dare you? I'm not mocking you. I'm saying I see you. He knelt in front of me, bringing his face level with mine. You're the first real thing I've encountered in years. The first person who acted on principle instead of calculation. The first person who risked everything for a stranger. His hand reached out slowly, giving me time to move away. When I didn't, couldn't. His fingers touched my cheek, and I hated how warm his skin was. How alive he felt. "You're beautiful," he whispered. "Your skin is like rich earth after rain. Your eyes hold fire that most people are too afraid to show. You walk through the world like you're ready to fight it and probably win." "Stop," I said, but my voice came out weak. "I want to offer you a deal, Mary. A business proposition." I forced myself to focus through the fear and confusion and the strange, unwelcome heat his touch was creating. "What kind of deal?" He pulled back, standing up and moving to a bar cart in the corner. He poured 2 glasses of whiskey, expensive single malt, the kind that costs more than my monthly rent.
Handed me one.
I took it, but didn't drink. "I have a problem," Jin-hyuk said, settling back into his chair. "My father built the Black Serpent from nothing. When he died 5 years ago, heart attack, not violence, surprisingly, he left me in charge. But he also left me with complications." "What kind of complications?" "The old guard. My father's original partners. They don't like how I run things. Too modern, too international, too willing to work with the Chinese and Japanese. They want me to marry Park Seo-yeon, daughter of the Park family, one of our major rivals. A political marriage."
Exactly.
"Merge the families and the territory disputes, create one superorganization." He took a sip of his whiskey. "But I don't want to marry Seo-yeon. She's beautiful, intelligent, and absolutely ruthless. We'd make terrifying children. But she would also have me killed the moment she secured an heir. It's what I'd do in her position." Despite everything, I almost smiled at his honesty. "So you need a way out," I said slowly, starting to understand. "I need someone unexpected. Someone they could never predict or control. Someone who doesn't care about my money or my power. Someone who would slap me in public and mean it." His eyes locked onto mine. "I need you, Mary." "To do what?" "Be my fiancé. For 6 months. Just long enough to make the Park alliance impossible and give me time to consolidate power on my own terms." I stared at him. "You're actually insane." "Probably." He leaned forward. "But think about it. 6 months of pretending to be engaged to me. In return, I'll pay you more than you'd make in 10 years of working 3 jobs. Enough to go home to Nigeria. Start any business you want. Buy your mother a real house, not a rented flat. Send your siblings to the best universities." He was hitting every pressure point, every desperate hope I'd been carrying. "And what do you get?" I asked. "Freedom. Proof that I can't be controlled or predicted." And he paused, something raw flickering across his face. "Company. Someone real to talk to. Someone who isn't afraid to tell me when I'm being an ass. You barely know me. I know you defended a stranger at your own expense. I know you'd rather lose your job than compromise your principles. I know you make jollof rice when you're homesick and listen to Burna Boy when you're sad. I know you call your mother every Sunday and lie about how well you're doing because you don't want her to worry." I felt exposed, vulnerable in a way that had nothing to do with physical danger. "This is crazy," I said. "Yes." I could still say no. "You could." His eyes held mine, dark and intense and impossibly honest. "But you won't. Because we both know you need this as much as I do." God help me, he was right. But I wasn't going to make it easy for him. 24 hours, I said, surprised by how steady my voice sounded. "I need 24 hours to think about it. And I'm not staying here. I'm going back to my apartment." He studied me for a long moment, then nodded. "Fair enough. But you'll keep the security detail. That's non-negotiable."
"Why?"
He pulled out his phone, swiped a few times, then showed me the screen. It was a photo.
"Of me."
Leaving my apartment that morning. The angle was from across the street, zoomed in, professional. But that wasn't what made my blood run cold. There was a red circle drawn around my head. Like a target. "Who took this?" My voice shook. "I don't know yet."
"But that's the point, Mary."
"The moment people saw me pay attention to you, you became a target. Every rival family, every ambitious underling, every cop looking for leverage, they all now see you as my weakness." "I'm not your weakness. I'm nobody to you." "Not yet."
But they don't know that.
He pocketed his phone. My protection isn't optional anymore. It's necessary for your survival. Those men following you? They're keeping you alive. The reality of what I'd stepped into crashed over me like a wave. Think about my offer, Jin-hyuk said softly. But understand that whether you accept or not, you're already in this. The only question is whether you want to profit from it or just survive it. If you're enjoying this story, smash that subscribe button right now because part 2 is going to blow your mind. Things are about to get dark, violent, and absolutely spicy. Trust me, you do not want to miss what happens when Jin-hyuk's enemies come for Mary. Hit subscribe and turn on notifications. He had one of his men drive me home, the British guy, who introduced himself as Christopher like we were at a garden party instead of in a Mafia vehicle. If you don't mind me saying, miss, Christopher said as we drove through the rain-slicked streets, you handled that remarkably well. Most people either cry or try to jump out of a moving vehicle. The night's still young, I muttered. He smiled. You'll be good for him, I think. I haven't agreed to anything. Haven't you? His eyes met mine in the rear-view mirror. The moment you didn't run screaming, you agreed. You're just negotiating terms now. Damn it. He was right. When we reached my building, Christopher walked me to my door like a gentleman. Someone will be outside all night. Not to imprison you, to protect you. You won't see them, but they'll be there. Comforting, I said dryly. Miss Okonkwo? He paused at my door. Mr. Choi doesn't let people in. Not really. The fact that he's trying with you, that means something. Just thought you should know. He left before I could respond. Inside my tiny apartment, I found my jollof rice still warm on the stove, perfectly cooked. Someone had even added a little extra seasoning, just the way I liked it. I ate it standing at my small window, looking down at the street where I knew invisible guards were watching, protecting me from threats I couldn't even see yet. My phone buzzed. An unknown number. Think about it. But know that I meant every word. You make me feel human again. I should have been terrified. Should have been packing my bags and booking the first flight back to Lagos. Instead, I finished my jollof rice and started thinking about what I'd ask for in the contract. Because Christopher was right. The moment I didn't run screaming, I'd already made my choice. I just didn't know yet what it would cost me. Subscribe now for part 2. Drop a comment telling me if you think Mary should take the deal or run. And don't forget to smash that like button if you're Team Jin-hyuk. Part 2 is coming soon and it's going to be intense. There's a reason this story is called Dark Romance, fam. You've been warned.